Also, very important, the resurrection. If there's no resurrection, there's no Christianity. And that verse is not there, but okay, 1 Corinthians, the verses from 1 Corinthians 15, 17, and 1:22 and 3. Very important. So Jesus dies for us, but the resurrection is part of the Trinity. Okay? Now, God saves us. He does the work. But somehow, we have to do our part too. So I like to tell a story about a friend of mine who said that it was his dad's birthday. He was a little boy, and he wanted to buy his dad something. So he said, hey, Dad, can you take me to the hardware store? So his dad drove him to the store, and then when he got there, he said, hey, Dad, can you pick out something that you want for your birthday? So he picked it out, and then he said, hey, Dad, can you buy this for me? And so his dad bought it, drove him home, and then his mom wrapped it, so he's a little boy. So everything that happened here was really the dad doing it and helping his son do it. Yet, the son was doing his part of giving a gift to his father somehow. And this is the mystery of our salvation. Really, everything is done by God, but he calls us to do our part. And even the part that we do is really him helping us. And this is how salvation works. It's a mystery there. It's hard to break it down, but we can see the two sides. It's when you try to look at how they go together where the mystery resides. Mystery, by the way, I don't know if I said this in the past, is something that we wouldn't know if God hadn't revealed it to us. He's told us this. We couldn't have figured it out on our own. And we can know it, but we can't grasp it fully. There's always more deeper that we can go, more to grasp. So, the crucifixion is the sacrifice of Christ, and this is the center. This is the center, the culmination of God's plan. And I put the quote on there from St. Augustine, and it's shown fulfillment. If we look back at Noah and the ark, and God sent the flood, and Noah's family was saved through the wood of the ark. Well, he says this: once a flood took place over the whole earth, that sinners might be destroyed. Talking about Noah. And yet, those who escaped in the ark were a figure of the church that was to be, which now floats upon the waves of the world and is saved from sinking by the wood of the cross of Christ. So, we can see fulfillment, and we can see the purpose of the cross and the new covenant that Christ establishes through it. This is the church. There's also a good analogy here in St. Peter. He talks about salvation coming through baptism. He says baptism now saves you. And he gives an analogy to those who are saved through Noah's Ark. And the analogy that's very fitting here is that while all of those who were on the ark were saved from the flood, not all of them continued to be followers of God and righteous after that. One of the sons goes on to continue the evil seed of Cain. And so they were saved, but not saved always. In other words, they pushed God away eventually. So salvation is an ongoing process. We're going to talk more about that as well. So because of the fall, way back at Adam and Eve, we all need to be saved, we need to be restored. But Christ is not plan B. God didn't say, oh, that didn't work, let's send Jesus. He was the plan from the very beginning, all along. Contemplating skipping something. The cross also shows us humility. The two poles in the Christian life are pride and humility. Pride says, no thanks God, I'm doing fine, I don't need you, I don't need to be saved by you, I don't need this, I don't need any fixing. But humility says, Lord, be it done to me according to thy word. Your way, not mine. So Jesus shows that there's no pride in him at all. He was completely humble, even to death on a cross. He was stripped naked, humiliated, sacrificed himself for our sake. Total humility. We also see humility with his mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary. She said, Lord, be it done to me according to your will. I am your handmaid. Whatever you want. And The more empty we are of ourself, the less we're selfish, the more selfless we are, the more God can do in us. That means we're totally open to His will and His way. Another point about the suffering of Jesus is the question, did Jesus have to suffer? In the beginning of Jesus' life, when he was a baby, Herod he heard that there was a king coming, so he tried to have Jesus killed. So he had all the children killed of a certain age. Now, what if Jesus had died then? Could that have been our sacrifice? He just took care of it, and that was it? No. There's something missing. In the end of Luke's gospel, Jesus says that it was necessary that he suffer. It was necessary that he suffer. And even in heaven, for all time, Revelation tells us that John sees this vision of heaven, and it says that there's a lamb standing though slain. Think about it. This is Jesus glorified and risen, yet the markings of his death are still there. So he's standing, yet though slain. So the suffering of Jesus is very important for our salvation. This tells us something important. It tells us that something about humility and about pain, about sacrifice, difficulties. That God chose this route to bring about our salvation. God can do what he wants. Perhaps he could have done it a different way. Was this really the best way? Well, it tells us that God understands pain and suffering. And he wants our pain and our suffering to have meaning and to have purpose. So the cross is not just a once and done thing, but our lives are to be joined to the cross. Jesus says, if anybody is to be my follower, let him pick up his cross. What does that mean? When Jesus was put to death, he had to carry his cross. The criminals were made to carry their cross to the spot of the crucifixion, and then they were executed. So when we're carrying our crosses, where are we going? We're going to unite ourselves with Jesus. Jesus offered himself as a perfect sacrifice to the Father in the Holy Spirit. And so that's what we're doing. We get to do what Jesus did. We get to be a part of it. So it's not that Jesus died so that we don't have to, but it's Jesus died so that we can too. So that our death can mean something. Our suffering, our sacrifice can be a part of Jesus's to the Father. So this is why St. Paul says, offer your bodies as living sacrifices. Through our whole lives, we can do things that unite us to Jesus. An important point here also is the unity of Christmas and Easter. Christmas is the celebration of the birth of Jesus. And Easter is the resurrection. So Jesus dies and then is resurrected. But Christmas exists for Easter. Jesus was born for us so that he could die for us. It was the same flesh that he took on as a baby, of which was given up for us on the cross. So we see these two are together, and this is, again, the incarnation. We also see the role, again, of Jesus' Blessed Mother in this way. That she was the one who said yes to God and whom Jesus took flesh from. She goes into the background during his earthly ministry, and then she appears again at the foot of the cross, Jesus' death. So this shows us that she has a role in our salvation. She says yes to God, Christ comes into the world, and there she is at the foot of the cross again, suffering with Jesus in her heart. God knows. Sorry, I keep changing my mind.